Gandhi addressing the Kisan Maha Chaupal in Bhopal, levelling allegations against the Prime Minister and the government on former Army Chief M.M. Narvane's book and the US-India trade deal as well. Keeping it with the US, in some latest breaking news that's coming in, the US has imposed a 10% tariff on all goods not exempted, lower than the 15% initially flagged by President Donald Trump. Now, this move follows the US Supreme Court ruling that struck down Trump's earlier emergency-based tariffs. Trump had first announced 10%, then signaled an increase to 15%, but now we understand that the lower rate is what that's going to be in effect. 10% tariffs, that's going to be the new tariff rate for the US as far as Indian goods are concerned. For all non-exempt goods, that is, those that are exempt will face zero tariff. This is a climb down in a sense, because Trump had indicated that the tariffs might be as high as 15%, but now the announcement from the US, the news coming in from the US is that the additional tariff starting Tuesday. Tuesday begins a little later in the US, but we're well into Tuesday here in India. So starting US time Tuesday, Washington DC time to presume, 10% tariff on all goods not covered by exemptions. A notice has been issued by US Customs and Border Protection. It said that the rate initially announced by President Trump on Friday, rather than the 15%, he promised a day later. Reacting to the Supreme Court ruling that threw out his tariffs that had been justified on grounds of emergency, Trump initially announced a new temporary global tariff of 10%. But then a day later, on Saturday, he said that he would increase that to 15%, and now it looks like it's back to that 10%. Big breaking news coming in from the US post the strike down of the new emergency-based tariffs. The new tariff rate is going to be just 10%. We have my colleague Karthik Malhotra joining us live from the newsroom with the latest. Karthik, we're talking about it now at India time, 3:32 p.m. As of now, it is 10%, isn't it? Because it's changing with every day, every hour after a point, isn't it, Karthik?
Got to be very, very clear of the time stamps, and I think the time stamps converted both in American as well as Indian time. Within America, the Eastern time and the Western time, because this story changes every minute, literally, Krishna.
But just before we go any further, Karthik, they said Tuesday, and I just assume that that's Tuesday, Washington DC time, because that's when the 10% tariff rate starts
Exactly.
flying.
So Tuesday, Washington time, it's the Monday, Tuesday, midnight in Washington right now as we speak. This is when the tariffs were to come into effect, and the tariffs have come into effect, but they've not come into effect at 15%, they've come into effect at 10%. So God alone knows what this means, because there is also another, I'm referring to the Reuters report, which is quoting another report which has come in the Financial Times, which is saying that there would be a 15% tariff which is going to come later. So Reuters is saying it's not been able to independently verify that. We haven't been able to do that either. But the point is, right now, as the clock has struck midnight, the early morning of Tuesday, it's a 10%, not a 15% tariff which is applicable. And there's a notification which has been issued by the US Border Protection Board. So it's pretty clear that it's not 15%, something that Trump had said. But again, remember, Trump had said this on Saturday. Saturday, then came Sunday. I think over the weekend, somebody in the administration maybe just forgot to update the Customs Department and the Border Protection Department, and they stuck to the Friday ruling of 10%. But one doesn't really know. It's a seesaw. It's pretty much a pendulum. It can swing in any direction, Krishna. So the logic question is, how does anybody plan trade with the US, and US wants everybody to trade with them? On what basis?
Okay, Karthik, before we go any further, I'm also trying to understand this. This is a global tariff of 10%, which means that just correct me if I'm wrong, this is the flat rate that's going to apply to all global trade partners of the US, and plus whatever will be the individual tariffs on individual countries?
Yeah, exactly. So this This is the global levy, right? What is called the surcharge in that section 122. This is that surcharge, and that surcharge has come at the lower threshold of 10%, not the 15%, applicable to all trading partners of the US. But remember, EU and UK both have been saying that they want the sweeter deal which they had by way of lower tariffs of 10% to continue. Now, this 10%, also the fact that now the global levy has come at 10% means that even the EU and UK don't really have a competitive advantage over their trade deal with the US, which would have otherwise made their exports to the US more lucrative. So this is the global levy, but this is only on the non-exempt issues. There are, of course, other exemptions, which again we don't have any clarity of. So I think White House is going to issue another fact sheet subsequently, which should tell us whether auto components, which were taxed at a flat 25% tariff rate, will that continue or will that also come down to 10%? We don't know. There were also other sectors, you know, the non-energy minerals, the steel, aluminium, etc., which attracted the higher tax. We don't know whether this 10% global levy covers that or not. So this exemption versus non-exemption also continues to be a grey area as far as the US administration and their tariff policy really goes. And that tariff policy honestly has become a bit of a joke right now, Krishna.
Karthik, for those keeping score, with this 10%, where is the India tariff rate at this stage?
10%, right? You said it. So I believe it is 10%. And because the 25% secondary sanctions, which were on account of India buying Russian oil, have ceased to exist, the 25%, once we had stitched up that the framework of the interim deal had come from 25 to 18. That 18 was brought down to 10, increased upwards to 15, has been brought down to 10. So ships carrying Indian goods into US territory as of at least right now, midnight in the US of Tuesday, for as long as another tweet, another Truth Social post or another notification comes, those goods should really, get offloaded very quickly before the policy changes again, and they should get that 10% instead of the 15%, which could likely come back soon.
Oh my God, this is a thriller. You know, I've never seen a trade tariff thriller that changes with every minute. It's like a T20
You're not alone, Krishna. You're not alone. I doubt anybody living on the earth right now would have ever seen so much uncertainty, so much ambiguity for something as vital as global trade.